Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Square One podcast. We're taking our guests back to square one where they first started their careers or their businesses, and we're going to learn from their failures. Square One's brought to you by Omni Home Services, which represents Chattanooga Home Inspector, Elevate Home Staging Design, Nuclear Pest Control, Radon Eraser, and hopefully some more business entities in the future. I'm your host, Malcolm Godwin. Thank you for listening. Today, we have a special guest, Neil Turner. You guys may know Neil Turner with River City Moving. You may also know him from having a degree in psychology, a portrait photographer, a former touring musician. You may not know that he's got some really funny stories about Ron Jeremy and Kevin Bacon and some other stuff. Neil, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
We were chatting just a second ago, and, Neil, tell us about Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon's way cooler than Ron Jeremy. I'll go ahead and start with that. So Kevin Bacon has a band with his brother called the Bacon Brothers. Super original band. They do I don't even know what it is. It's like bluesy rock stuff. And so in Greenville, South Carolina, that's where I lived before I moved here. The Bacon Brothers were playing in town, and so we thought it was a great idea to dress up as a giant piece of bacon and then cut out Kevin McAllister's head from Home Alone, right? And so we stuck that in the bacon. And so we were literally Kevin Bacon. And then me, I dressed up like a character from Footloose. So I was 80s dancing, and we were handing out sticks with Kevin Bacon's face on it to people with our website on it. And the news thought that was adorable. So we met Kevin's brother, we met Bill Engvall and all these people. And anyway, Kevin Bacon ended up inviting us on stage for the show. Everybody else thought it was a great idea too. The crowd loved it, but security didn't. And so they told us to get bent. And we were like, no. Kevin actually said this was cool. And they were like, if you don't leave, we're calling the police. And it was an amphitheater. So we went up to the top level and, rage danced, the feet and the whole thing Kevin Bacon did in Footloose. And then the cops came and threw us out.
So the cops did actually come and get you?
They did.
Was Kevin Bacon not like, hey, no, they're good?
I guess he was really feeling whatever he was doing.
Okay.
His Bacon Bros moment. And it was just, maybe he even thought twice about it. It's like, yeah, do I really want a piece of bacon up here right now? I don't know about it.
Oh, that's funny. Neil, so you've been doing River City Moving for 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. You guys got 12 people currently on staff. How many trucks are you running?
We're only running a couple of trucks.
Okay.
Probably going to come up to maybe 3 or 4 by the end of the year. Thing is, 26-foot box trucks.
Big trucks.
Big trucks. But I might get a van, throw a van in the mix for some of the smaller jobs, pack jobs and things.
So go ahead and tell us where we can find you real quick, Neil.
Mm-hmm.
I see rivercitymovingtn.com.
Yep.
Instagram is rivercitymovingtn. Facebook is RC Moving.
I mean, if you go to the URL, facebook.com/ and it's like RC Moving LLC. But if you just tag River City Moving, we're going to pop up.
And what's your phone number?
The company number is 423-241-6984.
So oddly enough, we were saying just a couple weeks ago, Madison was saying, hey, I know Neil Turner with River City Moving. And I said, crazy enough, just 30 minutes prior to our conversation, I was, I think I was driving down somewhere North Shore, and I saw your truck because it has a similar emblem of the Chattanooga Mocs. Mm-hmm. And I was very impressed. I was like, that's a big-ass truck with a cool logo. So that's cool.
Rolling billboard.
You're right.
Can you tell us a little bit about getting started with River City, how it came to be?
Totally. So this is the 11th year for me in the moving industry. I was a manager at Tiger Moving, and that's in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm from Tennessee. I'm from Morristown, but I ended up in Greenville. And so we grew that company from 1 truck to 16, and best of the upstate, 5-6 years in a row. It's kind of a big deal there. And I thought, well, it's time to go back home to Tennessee. And I wanted to start a company. I chose Chattanooga because I visited. I loved it.
So you just moved here?
Just moved here, man.
Cool.
Started the company, and of course I did the research. I mean, demographics, the population growth. It's a good place to be.
Tell us about your morning routine.
Well, when I read that question, I thought, do I even have one?
Okay.
Because every morning's a little different being the owner of the company. I don't know who's going to call or what I need to do, but typically, I'm going to wake up and be ready in about 15 minutes, have coffee, tell my dog I love him. If my girlfriend's not gone yet, same to her, and then I'm out.
Now, you say on your notes here that you try to pause to remind yourself for what you're grateful for. Do you do the positive affirmations thing? Is it something silent? Do you say it out loud?
It depends. It really depends. I do it before I get out of the bed. So a lot of times it is silent. I'll lay there and I'll take a deep breath and I'm like, okay. As crappy as whatever it might be that day, what am I grateful for? At least 3 things. And my dog is always on the list, but it's because he's, I don't know, a long tail of me and my boy. But yeah.
Shout out to the dog. What kind of dog?
Ravi is his name. Ravi's a mix. Greta, my girlfriend, she got a DNA test and he's everything, which explains why he's so amazing. Look, people bond with their pets for a number of reasons. And for me, he was a puppy when I got him. He was thrown out. But my sister passed away and it was an awful time for me. And that dude was like my rock. So yeah, grateful. Got to be.
So let's shift to the opposite antithesis of gratitude. On this podcast, we like to talk about the bad stuff, the failures. You have a couple of things down here. The one that stood out to me was you miss some things when you think you can do it all. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I have a bad habit of that. I like to do a lot of different things. And I've always said I've never been like an expert at anything, but I can do a lot of things to an okay degree. And so for the company starting up, I set everything up, built the website, logo design, all this stuff. And then you get here and you think you have it handled, and then you get rolling. And then the more you don't ask for help, the harder it gets when things pop up that you weren't prepared for, like getting your catalytic converters cut off, crackheads level, that kind of stuff. And slowly, really through networking and working in the community, I realized there was a lot I didn't know, and I've learned how to ask for help, and that's been amazing. Still difficult for me, but.
So also on your notes, you say, as a failure, you hitched your wagon to partners that were ineffective. You want to talk us to, I think we're all kind of guilty of that.
Yeah.
So you want to explain what you learned from that?
Yeah. Well, I think that, so if in business you find yourself doing that, you probably also do that in your personal life at some point. You've had relationships that you knew in your heart, this is not going to work, but maybe there's no alternative at the moment or whatever it is. And so that was how this was. I worked for the other company. They made us sign a non-compete that was wildly unenforceable. And sort of the head guy that sort of started up these satellite companies, he's real, he likes to sue people and he's very wealthy. And there would just be like a threat that if you don't do this the way that we want you to do this, basically I'll sue you out of existence, even though I won't win in court. And I weighed.
It'll tie you up with enough cash
Correct.
that it's going to drown you. Yeah.
Right. And I weighed the options. And at the time I was like, well, the deal that I'm being presented with doesn't sound so bad. And I'll just go with that. And that is, you're giving these partners 10% of the profit. But I get here and I'm not getting the help that I was told would happen, not even like a slice of it. So things weren't working out. And I kept like, okay, this is weird. I've known one of these guys now for 9 years. I would think that, this would have gone differently. The deal breaker was almost 2 years in, an operating agreement still was not in my hand. There was no signed operating agreement. So that's a problem with banks. That's a problem with anybody. And so, and the attorney was like, unacceptable. This has got to end. And he found a way to do that. So,
I think, I guess your learning lesson from that is clear expectations and then deliver on what, somebody expects. And I do think what also happens is when there's clear expectations, sometimes things change, which, I don't know your partner, but maybe the idea of having all that support did shift. and it wasn't clearly made clear to you. So that obviously can build frustration and animosity. So if things do change, I think it's very important, and I've learned to set up front expectations that things are going to be fluid, because guess what? Tomorrow's not today. It's not yesterday. Hell, we might have a fucking pandemic on our hands and nobody's allowed to leave their house.
No way.
I mean, like, things are...
Yeah, that was brutal.
That was brutal. And just example of, things can be fluid as long as we're clearly clear about that. Let's, do you have a CPA story?
Yeah.
Tell us.
All right. So I got a recommendation to go to these people to do the business taxes, and I did. I sat down, pulled up all the expense sheets, had a nice meeting, made them an editor on everything. And, you think at that point, well, you've got my numbers, you're good, right? And that's the deal. So then I get like the preliminary, like, this is what we're going to file email. And I said, well, none of the expenses are on here. Well, what are you talking about? And
That's a problem.
Yeah. I was, what do you mean what I'm talking about? The other 7 sheets of stuff there. Oh, I didn't even see those. Let me take a look at that, and I'll have to do an amendment. Fair enough. So they do the amendment, and I'm thinking, well, I'm glad we caught it. And then, hey, your taxes are done. Everything's correct now. I apologize for that. Come into the office and pick up your folder. Old girl wasn't there, so I couldn't talk to her that day. So I had to get from the front desk, and you have to sign for it to get it. And I glanced at it. Cool. And then I forwarded the electronic version to my personal accountant, and she's in South Carolina. She got it. We did my taxes, got the K-1, everything looked all right. So this year, we're coming around to that other problem we talked about, the LLC problem, the members thing. So my attorney's like, well, we need to make sure that we know exactly what you spent on the company, for startup in 22. I was like, okay. He said, well, whatever's on your taxes, that's what it needs to be. Fair enough. And I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, this expense number is about 3 times higher than anything that I put in. What is this? And then I'm sitting there with my accountant in South Carolina, and she's like, I just thought you took out a lot of credit cards, dude. And I was like, no. So what happened was the people here, the problem makers, they put down the revenue as the loss. So the amount of money that we made, the tens and tens of thousands of dollars that came in that 5-month period, was what they put down as our loss. And as our revenue, it was $742. So my accountant says, oh my God, in 38 years, I've never seen anyone mess up this badly, especially on an amendment to an original mess up. And then the CPA's here, oh my God, in all of our years, we've never seen anyone mess up. So I go to that CPA that messed up. What are you going to do about this? Because now I'm going to personally owe a lot of money to the IRS. My business has to do a 3rd amendment. I got to pay for that. She says, you ready for this? Drum roll. You signed for it. That's it. Basically, middle finger, you signed for it. So, kids, here's what I learned. Never sign for anything until you've looked at every single page of it.
Uh-oh.
You got a story?
No, I right before this podcast, I signed for a HELOC and I didn't read anything. Shitload of pages.
That's a big one, man.
Yeah. Oopsie. So this also rolls us right into your next question when we ask, what can you tell our listeners about a positive ROI? And it says just live up to your promises. In the moving industry, I would assume shit breaks, right?
Can.
What do you do when that happens?
Well, I don't do what other companies do, I'll tell you that. You have to be transparent with your pricing and your reasonable expectations for what happens if something goes wrong. And so you tell that customer on the front end how you're going to handle that so they know. So we have a piece of paper that we read over with them. We give them insurance options. For us, if something were to go wrong and it's the result of neglect, and what I mean by that is they are strapping it up with the shoulder harnesses incorrectly, it falls off. So boom, it hits the floor. I'm going to cover that. First of all, I'm going to, the goal is to repair. You'll replace if you can't. And then if they buy the additional insurance, there's an actual value replacement up to a certain dollar amount. But we always, I'm going to knock on wood here, but I have really great guys. And damages this year, so where we're already halfway through the year, man, we've only had like 2. Wow. And they've not been, anything that we couldn't fix for the customer. So on the front end, it's important to train your employees. Do not hire day laborers. Hire guys that want to be there. Pay them a reasonable wage. My guys are making $8 to $10 more an hour than anybody in town. They want to be there. And, don't hire guys that want 40 hours a week moving furniture. They're the ones that are going to break something. So I get, part-timers, and we make it all work.
I think a great takeaway there is pay your people more, right?
Yeah, man.
And because moving's a tough industry, man. I remember last time we moved, it was hot, and we had a bunch of useless shit to move, and there were 3 dudes, and they worked all day. I mean, I can't really expect... for me, I would almost expect a day laborer. So if you're able to pay more and get that quality person, that's just game changing.
And that's one of the differences I would say that you'll find between us and a lot of the other companies is we're not going to bring in guys that are questionable. We're going to do our background checks. They're going to be trained. They will be employees. So this is not a guy that yesterday was, doing whatever for money. And then today I'm going to move an antique china cabinet. No, pal.
You have any horror stories?
Who doesn't? PTSD. So that's the thing. One of the things that I've learned is how to stay calm. Because my guys will walk into situations and it's not their fault, but the customer is not who you want it to be. And then you got to navigate that and find a way at the end to get a good review out of it, have a happy customer, and your guys not want to quit. So in this case, the guys showed up, a lady booked the job, an older lady, and they show up to move her, a 750 square foot apartment. You can't fit that much in it, right? Wrong. I had a ton. And it was like the furthest apartment away from the elevator, multiple floors, the elevator's being shared by the whole community. And so as the guys are realizing this is going to be a problem, hey, Neil, I think we need another guy. All right, make sure the customer's okay with that. Well, as it drags out, the neighbors start to come over and hang out, and they start bringing booze, and the neighbors are getting drunk, and they're like cussing my guys as they walk by. Yeah, you guys are a bunch of assholes, saying all this stuff to them. So now they're being abused. The customer herself starts getting sauced. The daughter comes over, and her daughter-in-law did not know that this job had been booked. Apparently, mother-in-law booked the job while the family was away on vacation in Disney World, and she has dementia. She sounded great over the phone. I had no way of knowing that. So that's the reason that the description was really inaccurate, and the guys had this, hellacious job to do. I ended up I was 8 o'clock at night. They were still working. I'm sitting there enjoying my burrito from Mezcla. There's a plug. Best
Shout
Mexican
out.
joint in the North Shore. And I just had to put it down. I was like, whoop, gonna go put my shorts on and go help these dudes. And we knocked it out. I got there. The ladies' furniture items had pet urine all over it, dog hair everywhere. It was brutal.
What did you do about the drunk hecklers?
Well, luckily they said that they were going to, what's the word for it? When they just give you a bunch of fake negative reviews, review bomb. They were going to review bomb us because
For what?
moving so slow. That's what they said.
Because I'm sure that really affected their day.
Yeah.
You're just a spectator sport.
They ended up vanishing into I don't know where you go when you're drunk at that apartment complex, home, I guess. We never heard
Your
from them
apartment.
again. Fortunately, the daughter-in-law, we talked to her at the end, and all is well. So.
And the move, they did want to move.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yes, the move. So
Unpack my shit.
yeah. Had it gone the way it should have gone, the daughter-in-law would have booked the job. She would have let us know all of these other things. We would have had the right number of guys, and we wouldn't have booked it as a job 2. It would have been the first job of the day because it sounded like a short little job. But nope, it was a monster. You guys, that's not even a bad one. I'm not going to keep going, but after 11 years in this, let me tell you, I've got stories. I should make a show about it.
We'd watch it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So speaking of those stories, let's get into some of this other cool stuff about you. Touring musician.
Okay.
I don't know what the Super Bowl shuffle for the refrigerator Perry
Oh, yeah, that one.
What?
You know who the Fridge is, right?
Uh,
Chicago, the Bears, like the Bears,
the
big
Bears?
team from the 80s.
I do know the Bears.
Okay. So,
From the 80s, they're not around still?
oh, they're still around,
Okay.
but they were more successful then.
Got you.
And so the Fridge, who earned his own G.I. Joe figure, by the way, the Fridge, was a big deal. Super Bowl winning team. So, rap was a thing that was just kind of taken off. Beastie Boys were big, Run DMC. And so these football players thought, well, we're going to do a rap song and we're going to shoot a video for it. And it's called the Super Bowl Shuffle, and it's terrible, but it's wildly entertaining. They can't dance, and it was bad. So in South Carolina, they do, it's like the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame, and they booked our band. CBS Sports was using our music at the time, and so they used us for the performance, and we just decided to learn that song. We recorded all the backing tracks and synth and everything, and the Fridge was being honored. And, guys like, I think Shannon Sharp was there, or some of those dudes. But yeah, so the Fridge is sitting there, and all of a sudden, like, we started doing his old cheesy tune, and we nailed it. I'm going to go ahead and say it, but I don't think he cared. I think he was just kind of like, wow, that's cool. That's probably it's an embarrassing chapter of my life, young man. Whatever, Fridge.
Whatever, Fridge. Can we name this episode Whatever, Fridge?
Please do.
All right. So another question we've got is number one book recommendation and why.
Yeah.
You put down the Dark Tower series, Stephen King. It feels correct in a way nothing else has.
Yeah. Look, I love to read, and Stephen King he'll go down in history as one of the greatest nonfiction writers ever. I think a lot of people associate him with horror, but it's not all the man writes. Think of Shawshank Redemption, think Stand By Me, stuff like that. It's all Stephen King, The Green Mile, all that stuff. And so, the Dark Tower books, there's, I think, 8. I don't know. It's a story that it really resonates because what he does with it is he brings it from Fantasyland and relates it to our world in a way that he actually writes himself into the book. It's weird. I can't explain it, but I'll tell you this. At the end of that book, normally when you read these, series, like some Lord of the Rings books or something you're going to read, I guess you get a satisfactory ending, but sometimes you don't. This book has the best ending of any story I've ever read in my life, to the point that when I finished reading it, I had goosebumps and I had to close it. And I just sat there for about 30 seconds and was like, my God, well done, Stephen King.
I guess you don't want to just go ahead.
Yeah, don't
and-
spill it. No.
I can't. But if I could, I would get really excited, but I can't.
I think you can.
No.
Okay.
There are people out there that
That
must
is a
read
faux
this.
pas.
Okay. We're going to wrap up with our last question. And when we say we're going to go back to square one, when you wrote this note, how old was Neil when he went back in time and talked to himself?
Probably 16, 17 years ago, something like that.
So how old are you at this time?
I'm going to be in my early 20s.
Okay, so do me a favor. We're going to close our eyes and imagine you are literally going back and you're talking to 22-year-old you.
Yeah.
Have that conversation with us to you.
Well, I would tell that guy, look, the stuff you get bent out of shape about, it ain't it. Don't worry about that stuff. Don't put so much emphasis on trying to keep your abs. Like that's not that important. But no, I would. So I grew up in a household that had parents that worked swing shift at factories. We didn't have a lot of money. I was the oldest, babysitting at 9 years old, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of things go wrong when that's your world. And most men anyway, think we've got it.
Yeah.
We've got it.
Bottle that shit up.
Yeah.
Push it down.
22-year-old Neil said, that was a bunch of stuff that happened. I mean, that wasn't cool. But you know what? I've got this. I'll be all right. And as I went out into the world, all the ways that you don't have it are not apparent to you. Like they're not in the front of your mind, but they are to other people. So the way you handle situations, you might get easily triggered or something. And you think maybe I'm just a jerk. Maybe I'm just an ass that just can't handle certain things. But I would have said to that guy, let's go ahead and get in therapy. Let's go ahead and look at this stuff. And you're in school for psychology, but that's not going to serve you because it doesn't work that way. So go ahead, start unpacking this stuff now, because I ended up having to unpack it when my sister passed away. And
Sorry to hear that.
thank you. She had and again, this is another reason I even started this company. I could have taken the money I'd made at the other company and split, but I invested here because Chattanooga, as you probably know, has like more nonprofits than anybody around. There's a community of people here that seem to actually want to give back. And my sister had a psychotic break. She was a single mom. It's the reason I stopped playing music. It's the reason that everything changed for me. So when she left this world 2.5 years later, it was in a way that, and I'm not going to say how it happened because and nobody wants to have that in their mind, but it was worse than I think you could imagine. And it sent me to grief and trauma therapy for 5.5 years to sort of, you think you're going because you're grieving, but then you realize, dude, you've had stuff that you haven't unpacked for decades. So the importance of therapy, the importance of understanding your pain, no matter what level it is, everybody's is different, and find a way to turn that into something good. So I'm here to start the company, grow the company, but also to start a foundation in my sister's name here in Chattanooga. And so what we want to do is we want to help families that lose relatives the same way we lost her, because we didn't have those resources up in Morristown, Tennessee. You know, and it was like a nuclear bomb went off in my family. Her son, he's doing terribly. My brother lost his job the next year. He's still not the same. My mom, a nightmare.
I'm sure.
So, and my father almost drank himself to death. So I'm the only one that went to therapy because I could afford it. And I also knew that it was important. And dude, had I done that before, I would have been better equipped to deal with, you know, the next phases of life. But anyway, that's you know, the big reason that I started the company. So we can do low cost, no cost moving. We give discounts to seniors, veterans, healthcare workers, teachers. You know, we do volunteer work. I pay the guys to go do volunteer work. But that's the ultimate goal, is to get that started. And so, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Neil.
Well, it's important. And, you know, the girl that started, her name's Emily. She's starting to do the blogs for the website. She's like, Neil, I've known you for a minute, and you don't tell people about that enough. Like,
Tell us about
you need to,
the foundation. Tell us about the foundation that you're talking about. Is it started or you are creating it?
It hasn't started, but I've had almost 300 meetings with business owners since I started this thing. One-to-one meetings, sitting down, learning more about how I can help them. And if I feel safe with them, I tell them about this. And then I always ask, so in the event that you're in a position or you're still around when I start this thing, you know, do you want to be involved? I'm going to need help learning that lesson. And I've got a growing list of folks, I mean, just different walks of life here in the business world, who said, yes, when you get started, you know, we're ready to rock whatever you need. So I know that I need to be out of this first 2 years of stuff. I need to be at probably the end of the third year before I have the mental capacity and the time to shift to starting that up. But yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, man.
River City Moving, where you unpack your childhood trauma and your actual house.
That is awesome. Yeah.
Tell us one last time, Neil, where we can find you.
Yes. RiverCityMovingTN.com. That's the old website. If you go on Instagram, it's River City Moving TN. And of course, Facebook. I mean, forget the URL. Just type in River City Moving. We'll be there.
And what's your phone number?
423-241-6984.
Dude, thank you very much for coming on and sharing and opening up with us. It was very good advice, very good feedback, and I really enjoyed having you today, buddy.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you for listening to the Square One podcast, brought to you by Omni Home Services. We represent Chattanooga Home Inspector, Nuclear Pest Control, Elevate Home Staging Design, Radon Eraser, and hopefully more business entities in the future. We release a new episode every Thursday. If you like this episode, share it with your friends, neighbors, real estate agents, or whoever. Make sure you subscribe to Spotify, Apple, or wherever the hell you listen to your podcasts.